That's why even Chojipade Atisha, he was nicknamed as Refuge Pandita because he always practiced refuge and always taught refuge. And people think, oh, because, refuge something, a little low, should be. But it's really great master when they realize the refuge, So really, as Tang Tong Gyalpo said, ultimate, Manangkata Semjen Tamchi Lama Sanji Rinpoche la Sanji Chudun Genin la Lama Yadam Kandu Sola Ransem Tonsar Chuchukola. It's all about it. When you realize deeper the innermost nature mind, there's outer, inner, and innermost secret nature of the refuge. When you do that, and it so inspires, and then, when mind's inspired, and then arrive at the nature mind, and combined with this, very important, relative and absolute practice should go in hand in hand together. Sangha as friends to help them need that, because that just teaching is not enough. We need people when they have difficulties. And that, I think, it's really, we need to really encourage, we need to have that. And that also, for example, when I shared this in the Tibetan Book of Living Dying, chapter 19, when someone dies to you close, if you cannot do all the ceremonies, if you do not have the money, doesn't mean that you're condemned. You can do even a simple Om Mani Padme Hum. To consider the Om Mani Padme Hum represent the 6 negative emotions of the beings, which make them go round in the 6th realm of samsara. And by the compassion of the Buddhas, through the Sri of Papachen Risi and all the Buddhas, that purifies being born in the Lord. And that's why purifying, it's called Nende, Jangchub. Just by doing Om Mani Padme Hum. And then also just simply thinking that, when you invoke in the sky before you, the embodiment of all the Buddhas and the Masters, if you have a Guru Rinpoche, same as Papachen Risi. Nimadaka Chuku is Guru Rinpoche. Lungku, Papachen Risi. And Chuku, Opame. They connect together. And consider them. And you, same Guru Rinpoche. For me, it's Guru Rinpoche, is the embodiment of it. And the same as your Lama. And then you pray very strongly on behalf of the deceased or the dying person, saying, please purify him or her of all our negative karma. And you do that strongly when you invoke that. Then you consider Guru Rinpoche's mood with compassion. From it, a warm light of compassion, love, wisdom comes in the form of red light. Warm, doesn't have to be red, but warm. Comes and then really purifies him or her of all the negative karma, destructive emotion. And as Khyentse Rinpoche used to say, you consider his body all mark of, purification, his whole body dissolve into light, which he says is significant because this body is as a past of past karma. So you consider your body dissolved into light, create the auspicious condition of temder of purifying all your karma. Body dissolved into light, and then you become a body of light, becomes one with Amitabha, one with Guru Rinpoche, one with Cherese. And that you can do that again and again. And say Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Banza Sato Hum, Om Mahom Banzan Guru Padma Siddha. Whatever mantra you do is good. So very much. And really doing that simply like that we can. We need to know that. So therefore we don't have to be frustrated because you don't have money, you don't have the means. But if you may, and sometimes if you even have just one coin, or like this, through pure motivation, if you offer that as a light, But the story of, we see, relying upon joy, this woman who offered just a single lamb with pure motivation, made dispel the darkness of ignorance of all beings, When all the lights went out, this one kept burning. When Mongana asked Buddha, how come? He said, well, no waters of the ocean can put away there because she offered with pure motivation. Whereupon she approached him, and then she approached Buddha, and Buddha blessed him and prophesied she will become a Buddha. And her name is the light of the lamp, said to be. So it's like that, just simple and a small one. Is the motivation is powerful. Offering that. We need to know that. We need to teach. Because there is, something, I remember one great scholar of study of religion, he said, you Buddhism, he said, are so amazing. All other teachings have just the outer aspect. You have only not the outer, but inner and innermost meaning. There's so many ways to practice. And so then you see, having taken refuge in the Buddha, the main thing is after you take refuge, then you see suddenly, having taken refuge, you consider from the refuge tremendous rays of light blessing come to you. And then all beings, you are, how do you say, you like when you throw a stone amidst the flock of birds and they all fly up, you all fly and dissolve into the refuge. Refuge also dissolve from the outer into the inner, and finally into Guru Rinpoche. And the Guru Rinpoche also dissolve into the ultimate nature. And then you rest in the ultimate nature of the nature mind, the wisdom of Rigpa. Ultimate, which is in the Vajrayana like Deton Dundran Mepa, unity of emptiness and bliss, unity of clarity and emptiness, unity of appearance and emptiness. In the Madhyamika is appearance and emptiness. In the Muhammad is bliss and emptiness. Anyway, so like that, that ultimate refuge. Kunzup Thandam Sungrir. And then, because through the ultimate one, through the relative refuge, you accumulate merit. And then through the wisdom which is resting in the nature mind, ultimate nature, you accumulate wisdom. And then you thereby two accumulations, which are result in yourself becoming, ultimately you become enlightenment, you become the Dharmakaya. For the sake of yourself, for the benefit of others, you manifest as Rupakaya. For benefit. Rupakaya is a result of merit, and Dharmakaya is a result of the realized ultimate nature. And more, if you accumulate merit, that's why a great master like Ngyondro Shing emphasized, even though you may attain high realization, the more you accumulate merit, in the, then more, when you become a Buddha, when you benefit beings, you be able to benefit more. Like, look at the great masters who have able to benefit many beings. That's a result of because they have tremendous sunam. Okay?
Mr. Rinpoche, if Rinpoche could speak about the next inner preliminary, which is the bodhicitta.
And so now from there, going to the next, very essentially, is the generation bodhicitta with heart of enlightenment, which is very much the motivation, which is really then entering the Mahayana. Up until now, refugees can be the basic vehicle, the root yana, but also the refuge has elements of Vajrayana in it also, in our approach. But then generation bodhicitta, very much, which is really the heart of Mahayana, very much. Generation bodhicitta is very much really realizing, it said, the Buddha Master said, for the sake of others, longing to attain complete enlightenment. That's the definition of bodhicitta. For the sake of others, longing to attain complete enlightenment. I think, first of all, I must say, on reflection, some of the things I've been sharing on refuge and all this is very shoddy, very, very central. And it's, if a great scholar or a great master would look at it, would probably, feel there are many faults. So I ask for the indulgence, forgiveness, but my main intention is for the younger people, and to really more communicate, more on a really inspirational level. I'm not sure I've been able to do that either, but at least I try effort. And so there are many aspects of teachings which when I went back over thinking, I think I didn't do such a good job, but then I think, I think it will do for the moment. And in future, I'm happy to do something more fuller. And now next is Jangchub Shing, generous bodhicitta. I think first is taking refuge. Actually, something extraordinary about Ngyondro is that it's a purification we effect as a preliminary, as a foundation. But also, Ngyondro is so pervasive. Ngyondro is something you never finish in a sense. If you really look into the Ngyondro, what it really contains, it really forms the basis of the three yanas. And it's so incredible. Like, when you look into the teachings, wherever you look, there's always the refuge. There's always the bodhicitta. There's always the purification. There's always the offering. And there's always the element of Guru Yoga. All that. So therefore, in a sense, what we are being offered in the Ngyondro is really showing the most crucial, most important part of the practice of Buddha Dharma. I think something that perhaps was very much devised by some of the great masters who, from Tibet, who came to, early masters, I think so, as a way of really a process of, in a sense, of how a practitioner genuinely, when want to embark upon the Buddha Dharma, it's really, really fully, and to really effect his basic being and to purify, so. And so it's a really practice for Tosa Dibjan, and so therefore the refuge is really, it's like to finding confidence, trust, and it's really the entrance to the spiritual path. And for that, most important is the faith which we develop as we go along. If you look into the word of my perfect teacher, Kunzana Mishanung, and Jewel on Moment of Great Liberation, there are wonderful stories and accounts that really illustrate, inspires faith, So anyway, but now we embark on the next most important thing is bodhicitta. And this is where we come into the Mahayana. The heart of Mahayana is bodhicitta, or Jangchub Shing. More, it is said here, Sem Chepa, generation of the heart of enlightened mind. I always call it Jangchub Shing, or bodhicitta, is heart of enlightened mind. Very much. It's more like, what is the mind of Buddha? Is bodhicitta. And what does bodhicitta consist of, fundamentally? Wisdom and compassion. Very much. But in so doing, there's a simple way of practicing, but I want to offer something that's very, really very authentic. I found, always I share things which I found it personally very helpful, because also, even though I was I'm an incarnation and brought up in the tradition, I also struggle to find the really inspiring. Sometimes teachings are too vast, or sometimes it's difficult to really get to the heart of really to something that is satisfying.
Yes.
So I found this from the teachings from Buddha Rinpoche, yes, and the great master. I found it very inspiring. It's based on the 4 lines, very famous prayer called Jangchub Shing Rinpoche, Mache Panam Chechuchi, Cheba Nyamba Mepa Kone Kone. Very inspiring, which is precious sublime bodhicitta. May it rise in those whom he has not risen, but may it never fail where it is risen, but may it go on increasing further and further. In an incredible way, in the whole chapter on in fact, according to Buddha Rinpoche, that the entire Bodhicharya, Jangchub Shing, the 10th chapter is put within the frame of these 4 lines. And also in the word of my perfect teacher, Kunzana Mishanung, the whole chapter on bodhicitta is very much based. Condensed. Very much, this is the root, almost like a root text. And it's very good when you have something like that, then you can essentialize. And so, but this is taught even more simply through the Menga approach. Menga is the more direct know-how, the experiential heart advice of great masters, that really comes from the wisdom mind, just wonderful. And so I found this very helpful, which is first is, what is precious sublime bodhicitta? What is Jangchub Shing Rinpoche? The first line precious Sablan Bodhicitta, Jangchub Shing Rinpoche, is the intention of wanting all sentient beings to attain the perfect level of Buddhahood. That's its signification. That almost defines Sublime Bodhicitta, precious Sablan Bodhicitta. Now the next line is, the way for it to rise, it says, may it rise in those on whom it has risen. Now, way for it to rise in those in whom it has not risen, or sometimes in whom it has not given birth. Mache pana chejurchi, or mache pana chejurchi. That is training of the mind in the what is called four measurables. Semeshi. Now, so wonderful about this is that it brings all the different elements of bodhicitta practice together. And so kind of really, it makes a complete sense and so that it becomes complete and really thorough. So, so that may it rise in those whom has not risen, or may it give birth in whom not given, is through training your mind by the means of four measurables. Tsemeshi. Four measurables. Tsemeshi. I'll tell you that comes later. First, I just outlined briefly. And then the third line, may it never fail where it has risen, but go on increasing further and further, is to rouse the supreme bodhicitta and to train in the precepts of aspiration action, means to arouse Jangchub Shing and to train in the precepts of aspiration action bodhicitta. So it sums up all up. But now, if you go step by step, the first is, we already know what precious Sablan Bodhicitta is. And what is the precious Sablan Bodhicitta? Is the intention of wanting all sentient beings to attain the perfect level of Buddhahood. That's the most important thing. Well, sometimes when I remember Ngyondro Rinpoche say, when you say, oh, I wish beings to be free of suffering, I would want them to be happy, that's really not bodhicitta. That's, one of the four measurables, or it's like an aspiration prayer. But the real bodhicitta is, you see, the intention of wanting all sentient beings to attain the complete level of Buddhahood. So, but now, in that going slowly, now, it's a good thing about this, how we just, give birth to bodhicitta. How do we arouse bodhicitta to be born in our mind? Is through the four measurables, which is, it's called Tsemeshi in Tibetan. First is love. Chamba is to wish sentient beings to possess both the cause and result of happiness. We say in the Tsemeshi, the prayer, may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of that's love. Second is compassion, karuna or nyingje, is to wish sentient beings to be free of the cause and effects of suffering, which is and the third is joy or gawa, which is wish that sentient beings never be apart from happiness, which is in the prayer, may all never be separate from the sacred happiness that is sorrowless. And finally, equanimity, which is tongyam, is to wish all sentient beings to be free from the attachment aversion. Now, these four, why are they called immeasurable? Because the object is immeasurable. Because you think of all sentient beings. Normally when you love only your friends. But here, our family. And when you show compassion, it's only for the poor people, not for the rich. But this is immeasurable for all sentient beings. Hence the object is immeasurable, and also intention, motivation. Therefore the fruition is immeasurable. Hence it's called immeasurable. So the first is love is, as you know, is an antidote to anger or hatred. As Buddha said, fire cannot destroy fire, just as fire can only through love. Love is over. That's why I think in this day and age, especially, love is so important. And also in the future, Buddha is the Buddha of loving kindness in a sense, Buddha mantra. Anyway, the love. And the next is compassion, which is wish sentient beings are free of suffering and the cause of suffering. Third is joy. You see, the compassion is the antidote to passion. They're the gross passions. I don't mean passion in the sense of enthusiasm. That I think is fine. Like sometimes you find great lamas, masters, they're very passionate about the teachings, but compassion. Not that, but it's about the gross passions that bring us suffering. In fact, the word compassion means when you go through suffering and come out of it. Like even the life of Christ, he went through the passion. 40 days and 40 nights, I think roughly speaking, something like that. I'm not, maybe not very accurate. And then he finally came through saying, let not my will but thy will be done. So that's very famous, that one. And so it's coming through passion is compassion. That word in English word is said to be. Like a lotus. Like a lotus, you could say anyway. And so, whereas the joy is an antidote to jealousy and envy. Because when you're jealous, it eats you up. And really, and of course, you don't win. It's really uncomfortable for you. It's really, but whereas if you, on the other hand, the teaching says if you rejoice, because all these are antidote for destructive emotions. Instead of anger, love. Instead of jealousy or envy, rejoice. It is said, if you rejoice at the merit of somebody, if someone is successful, someone you know is successful, even among the Dharma students, your Sangha friends, maybe someone is more favored by the Lama, and you feel a little jealous. But then you could say, I rejoice at, I think, the wonderful karma of this person to have this favor and how good it is. I rejoice. But then you say, I pray that may all others who are no less fortunate than me, may they also have the same kind of happiness and success. And in that you can include yourself. So the wonderful thing about rejoicing, it is said in the teachings, if you rejoice at the merit of somebody, it is said actually you gain the half the merit without doing anything or without rejoicing instead of jealous. So it's like a win-win situation, and it's wonderful. That doesn't mean when you say you win the half the merit, doesn't mean you take away her, only other person's left half. No, you get, you get a half of that because there's plenty, there's like immeasurable. So I'm not explaining so well, but so forgive me. So the rejoicing is antidote. And then equanimity is antidote to bias, which comes from ignorance. Because you realize it's the lack of equanimity, this bias, and that's the cause, because of ignorance. And so when you actually practice bodhicitta, compassion, even though it begins with, for measure, begins with love, first way to sow the seed of bodhicitta in you, or Jangchub Shing, is through the four measurables. So that's Himeshi. Now, even though it begins with love first, compassion, joy, and equanimity, when you practice, it becomes equanimity first. You know why? Because if you don't have equanimity, then whatever this thing is not immeasurable. So first, we only love our friends, but not an enemy. We compassion to the poor and the weak, but not the strong and the rich. So therefore, equanimity is very important. What is equanimity? Is that because, you see, we have a limited vision. We only see this life. We have no long-term visions. If you really look into, like in that we have lived many, many lifetimes. In that all the sentient beings have been our fathers and mothers, brothers, sisters, and our enemies. We've done everything together. We've really been through everything. So in a sense that when you realize all beings have been our fathers and mothers, been so close, we cannot just, how would you say, love one and just ignore the other. Even the idea of like enemy is just it's limited, because sometimes you see an enemy at the beginning of your life may turn out to be your best friend. Sometimes a friend can become your worst enemy, your best friend, or your wife or someone you love end up in divorce and acrimony, especially in the West. And West is really, in the West it's quite really, everything is like almost double, triple, it's magnified. It's incredible when I went to the West and see all these things. You begin to see emotion at its peak and display. That's me. And so therefore, what we call friend enemies, it's only a limited vision, limited view. In fact, there was one great master who said, friend is an enemy, enemy is a friend. And then there was a great disciple of Buddha who had the clairvoyance. Once he was going on a sunyam, receiving alms at midday, that in the Theravada tradition, in the basic vehicle tradition, where the monks, nuns are really follow the discipline of Vinaya. They don't cook, they don't, in fact sometimes I don't know, they don't develop a household or cook, or they just go on receiving alms. And Buddha used to do that also. So when they went on, he came upon a family. That was this father, the man, he was holding this baby very affectionately. And he was eating a fish and throwing the bone. There was a dog, female dog that was barking and trying to, have the remains of the fish eat. And then he was kicking and the dog was saying, ow, 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 ow. It's kind of a normal scene. But because of the extraordinary, he had the clairvoyance, he saw that in the past, Pasha Saiking Malada, that the fish he was eating was his father and previous life, Pasha Saiking. And the dog was the mother, Pasha Saiking Malada. And then the baby he was holding most affectionately was the worst enemy in his previous life. So how ridiculous samsara is. So whose enemy, whose friend? How can we say? We cannot really, because that's the ignorance, And that's why I always tell my students, if you hate somebody so much that you don't want them to come as your child, then you better make friends. And so that's why, when you see from the point of view, it's like all beings have been connected with us, somehow.
It's really a world of no strangers.
Yeah, no strangers, they're really. And so when you realize that, then your whole vision changes. Then you begin to, even the love becomes also immeasurable. And compassion also, joy. And then it begins to really, become the Jangchub Shing, yitsa. It's like in the spirit of that begins to. So that's how first you start. That's the first step. And then the second is, for it to rise in those who has not risen, is the training by the means of measurable. I've said that already. But then, for it to never fail but go on increasing further, is, first of all, is rousing the Supreme Bodhicitta. And second is training in the precepts of aspiration and action. Now, as regards arousing the Bodhicitta, the most famous definition of bodhicitta is from Buddha Maitreya in the Ngyondro, Abhisamaya Lankara, from that, which is beautiful. Rousing the bodhicitta is, for the sake of others, longing to attain complete enlightenment. Rousing bodhicitta is, for the sake of others, longing to attain complete enlightenment. That's the real definition. That is common to all, is the most authoritative from Buddha Maitra. So this has actually two aspects, or two main aspects. This first aspect or first purpose is to focus on sentient beings with compassion, thinking how all sentient beings can be parted from both cause and result of suffering. Basically, it means that, that is first when you see the suffering of beings, then you're really moved with compassion. And then you say, how I wish to free all sentient beings from the suffering and the cause of suffering. Yeah, that's the, And then the second aspect, the purpose is focused on the complete enlightenment through wisdom, thinking how all sentient beings can attain the precious level of complete Buddhahood, which is free from both the cause and result of suffering. The second is like almost realizing deeper, saying that, well, if I want to free sentient beings from the suffering, cause of suffering, that alone is not sufficient. Because whenever you free somebody from suffering, cause of suffering, they may get back into it again. Just the example of the Buddha, Avalokiteshvara, Papa Chandasi, when we freed all the royal ramps, and then he said, well, that was easy, he just relaxed. He closed his eyes, when he opened up, it would fill again. And then he just almost, his heart broke. His initial intention, bodhicitta, almost, he almost gave up, and that's why his head cracked. And there's a story, you'll find this in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, in the appendix also. It's beautiful. Then the two tears came, and then the Tara emanation, and the old Buddhas blessed him. And so, anyway, so the thing is that what we need is not just simply saying may be free from suffering, cause of suffering. That's not enough. But rather, you want all beings to attain the complete enlightenment, which is a complete enlightenment, which is free from both cause and result of suffering. In fact, if you have complete enlightenment, when we talk, people think of like, enlightenment, but actually enlightenment is perfect happiness, the lasting happiness. Because whatever happiness we have is only temporary, and often not without suffering, without problems. But when you have the happiness of enlightenment, it is actually lasting. And that is actually, we can say one thing, is when you focus on the first aspect, focus on sentient beings with compassion, thinking that how all sentient beings can be parted from both cause and result, how we should free all beings from suffering, cause of suffering, that's compassion. Whereas the second aspect is you focus on the complete enlightenment through wisdom, that's love, wisdom, love. In fact, love and compassion. Actually, when it's elaborate, when you talk about this, it's four. Love, compassion, joy, equanimity, four. Yes. Then you break down into two, love and compassion. Then you break down to one, compassion. When you talk about compassion, it's both love and compassion, the two sides of it. So the love, the compassion is focused on sentient beings with compassion. So you want to free them, all beings from suffering, cause of suffering. And the love is like a wisdom love, more profound love, is that you realize that, that's not enough. You want to bring them complete enlightenment because it's the lasting happiness, which is free of suffering. So that, I can find it so beautiful. But then there is also, from the Dzogchen, from the higher point of view, is not just compassion, focusing on suffering, focusing on the suffering being compassion or inspired by, but rather what's called summoning the fourth. It's not just thinking sentient beings with compassion, but rather from the highest point of view, you see that all beings have Buddha nature. They're all Buddhas to be. So therefore what you want to do is you see with respect all, Sadhana Lama, Buddha, Bodhisattvas, you understand? And so therefore you begin to see with the respect, you want to return to the glory of the true nature. So the summoning forth the wisdom, That's in the. So it's, I think, incredible, this one. So simple, it's quite profound, little intricate. So you need to, sorry, my words not coming out very well, but you need to reflect on this. Taking the, Jangchub Shing Rinpoche, Machi Pana, Chiche Banyamukun, Jangchub Shing Rinpoche, precious Sambhavadicita, is the intention of wanting all sentient beings to attain perfect level. And Machi Pana, Chijuchi, is to rouse the four measurables. Is rousing the Supreme Bodhicitta, which is, according to the citation from Buddha Maitreya, is for the sake of others, longing to attain complete enlightenment, which has two aspects. One, focusing on the sentient beings with compassion. One is focusing on sentient beings with compassion. Another is focused on complete enlightenment through love, wisdom. I mean, it's really profound, so profound. If you look into like the word of my perfect teacher, Kunzala Mekhano, and the deeper the Sindhi or the guide of the word of my perfect teacher, this is so vast. Now, then when you come into bodhicitta also, bodhicitta can be divided into two, what is called absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. Tundam Chanchu Sen, the Kunzup Chanchu Sen. The Tundam Chanchu Sen is some translated as ultimate bodhicitta or absolute bodhicitta, two ways, okay? Whereas the relative bodhicitta is, Kunzup Chanchu Sen is described as relative bodhicitta or conventional bodhicitta. Okay, translate that way. So, what is relative bodhicitta has two aspects, aspiration and action. And it's beautiful. So beautiful by Rinpoche. The definition of that is to pledge ourselves first to the goal is the bodhicitta in aspiration. Pledge ourselves first to the goal is bodhicitta of aspiration. It's like if you want to go to Bodh Gaya, you have the intention of wanting to go there. That's the bodhicitta of aspiration. Bodhicitta of action is actually first is like aspiration, and maybe a little bit of preparation can be involved also, but the real action is when you actually start going there, doing it. Then pledge ourselves to the cause is the bodhicitta in action. So then wish to accomplish the 6 parameters. 6 parameters, Parachimba 2 is the way to accomplish that bodhicitta. In action, which is the cause, the means of attaining the goal, is pledging toward that, pledge ourselves to the cause. This is the bodhicitta in action. So then wishing to accomplish the 6 parameters, which are the cause and means of attaining our goal, which is to pledge ourselves to the cause, this is the bodhicitta in action. Is that clear?
It's so systematic.
Very systematic. It's very, very powerful. I mean, and whereas the absolute bodhicitta can be realized, absolute bodhicitta is the realization of ultimate nature of shunyata through meditation, through analysis, through investigation, to find how all phenomena are dreamlike. All phenomena are dreamlike. Even the contemplative nature of unwanted, not only phenomena are dreamlike, but even the mind in this nature is also. As Buddha said in the Wisdom Sutras, he said, mind semla sem manchita sem jiragyu. Mind is devoid of mind, for the nature of mind is clear light. Semla sem manchita sem. It's wonderful. And the real ultimate nature of the shunyata is absolute bodhicitta, but that's realized through meditation and through more directly with the master intuition nature of mind. I mean, you can study about shunyata. There are a lot of books, discussions and debates about, clarify that when you study it like a scholarly, like the Pandit approach. There's the measured approach. But sometimes when you do the Pandit approach, is really, first when you study, you get so confused. You have no idea. You don't know what the hell is going on, honestly. No idea you study. When I began to study like a Madhyamika, no clue, just memorize it in a para. But then when you meet masters like, really, like Buddha Rinpoche, Jangchub Rinpoche, old Ngyondro, and when you really, they show you the nature mind, then you begin to say, aha, you get a taste of what bodhicitta is, absolute bodhicitta is, which is the wisdom of realizing ultimate nature. The mind that realizes actually the mind that realizes the shunyata is the nature mind. It's the same thing. So the absolute bodhicitta to realize through meditation, whereas the bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta is through receiving the bodhisattva vow. Yes. And then you trained in then the third part, as you see, is training in the bodhicitta of aspiration action. Remember, Jangchub said, Jupachan. So how do you train in now this is so beautiful. How do you train in the bodhicitta of aspiration? How do you first? It's first considering others same as yourself. Because I remember when I was first teaching, when I was first working with dying people, and working a little bit with hospice movement or that approach in the West, before my inception of my book, And that a lot of people came to me saying that, they love their father, mother, but they're dying. But because there's so much history of suffering and pain and blockage, that love is completely blocked. They cannot love them. What to do? And whereupon I found this practice so wonderful. Instead of considering them as your father and mother, with all the history, just consider them as just like you. They're human beings. They do not want suffering. They want happiness. When you consider, I think sometimes trouble with us, we only think we are the human beings. Everybody else is everybody else, I think that's the person. We don't really see others as human beings. We don't really consider their feelings. So just start thinking that others are like you. Rang lula pelon la yela never much. Take the example of your body. Don't harm others. In Christianity it says, love thy neighbor as thyself. But in Buddhism it's rang lula pelon la yela. Take the example of your own and don't harm others. So very much actually, when you realize others are the same as yourself, unfortunately we cherish ourselves only. We only love or cherish ourselves. But when you begin to realize others is same as you, when you begin to feel that others are, when you open up your feelings a little bit and start realizing others are another you, then you begin to share your cherishing of self with others also. That's how you enter into. In Chensonga?
Yes, Rinpoche, and what comes to mind right now is Rinpoche was speaking about Lodro Namji, the first one, precious human life. I think when we start contemplating how precious human life is, I think the important part is the human life, not just my life.
That's right. Very much. And we are all human beings, really. We are all interconnected. We are all interconnected. We know now, for example, particularly in this modern age. Previously, we all could live a little bit independently, old kingdoms and different things. But now with all the communication, everything, what happens in one country affects all of us, really in a big way. And so therefore, really, when you start considering another person as same as you, I say another you, then you see that's the first way to open your heart. Second is then, if you go further, you start exchanging yourself with the others. And then that compassion grows. And then you start doing the practice like Tonglen. Tonglen practice. Giving and receiving should be practiced alternately. This alternation should be placed on the medium of breath. Which is Tonglen is when you breathe in this meditation, when you take all the suffering of beings with compassion. And when you breathe out, give your happiness through love. The practice of love and compassion. Placed on the medium of breath. It's wonderful. In the chapter 12 of the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, I talk about the story of how the Tonglen practice had such an impact among the leprosy people, how they begin to heal. It was extraordinary. It's a miracle. It's a magic. The Supreme Bodhicitta, the Whispering Jewel, often it's called. Really, so moving. Yeah.
Yes. Magical and so immediate to place it on the medium,
Yeah.
so wise to put it on the medium of breath.
I know. And I think sometimes when you have devotion to the Master, also you kind of, you feel so much gratitude to them. So it's also when you start thinking of compassion, bodhicitta. You know, really, just you're so moved, you know, really, so moved, so extraordinary. And then the third step is when you start considering others are more important than ourselves. Because as the Dalai Lama often says, there are more others than you, you know. So like that way is how to train in the bodhicitta of aspiration. Then in the bodhicitta of action is Paradachinbatu, 6 parameters, which is first is generosity, which is dana in Sanskrit, and jimba in our language. And then very simple definition, that's this beautiful definition, which is, what is generosity? Generosity is to cultivate the attitude of generosity, giving. I remember the great masters, you know, Patrumbachi, their method is that first when you start giving, you know, if you cannot give, then you can start giving from your right hand into the left. From the left to the right, just giving. That's just a practice. Slowly start giving from your right to the left. Just a little.
Giving comes, you
Yeah.
give.
Yeah, and then also slowly you may start giving a little cabbage or something, a little bit, you know. Then more. Afterwards, as the good bodhisattva, you can even offer your limbs. You know that. Attitude, cultivate the attitude of generosity. Generosity is really, if you have generosity, it's like you've discovered infinite treasure. Generosity sometimes is connect with almost absolute bodhicitta. When you realize ultimate nature mind is then this incredible infinite treasure of generosity. Then next is discipline, which is tsultim, which is basically refraining from, Sanskrit is called shila. But in Australia, by the way, shila means a girl. Sheila. She's a Sheila. In Sanskrit, Sheila, discipline, tsultim, refrain from harm. Tsultim is actually acting appropriately. Discipline is acting appropriately. Often, like when you could talk about the law is not necessarily justice. When a law is applied compassionately, to understanding to the need of the person, really, justly, then it's justice. Tsultim is when you act according to. So therefore, sometimes I think what happens is that we have certain rules and certain things. If you follow them very, kind of rather very kind of stodgily or very fundamental way, you know, and that's sometimes not being compassionate, really. I think it's very important to be compassionate, to be understanding. That's why when you look in the teachings, there's always flexibility. They always relate to the person accordingly. That's where the compassion is, that, you know. Like, for example, in the Dikpachum Mijashin, commit not a single unsolemn action. But then people say, how can you possibly not commit a whole, commit a single unsolemn action? But the masters, when they really say, they said, what it means is as much as possible, abandon all the negative. So slowly, very much relate to the, you know, slowly you grow. I mean, you cannot take a whole plate of food into your mouth. You take with a spoon, you know, and chew it well. So that's why really discipline is a refrain from harm. And then also discipline is often compared to a perfume that permeates. It's like almost pervasive to somebody like, I remember my master Jaman Khyentse. He had this incredible, like a aroma or aloe, like a perfume, you know, really incredible. Like whenever you come, your mind is completely in peace, you know, incredible. Even after he died For about a year or so, it remained with his clothing. There's a famous story about his tailor. The monastery was there, and there was a kind of a river there, and he was living the other side. And when he, went over before, the water was, river was easy to cross. But then, meantime, when he came back to bring his clothing to Jamang Khyentse, what he'd stitched, the water, meantime, the rain had come, it swollen. And without knowing, he was swept by the torrent. And then immediately Jamang Khyentse channel he invoked. And that moment he saw my master Jamang Khyentse, a vision smiling, and that his aura, or aroma that came to mind, and then a wave took him across the shore. So really such people. Then the patience. Now next is patience, but it's Zöpa in Tibetan. But patience, by the way, is not just patience, like in Sherlock Holmes' Merchant. I shall be patient, slowly. Sometimes you can be very patient to wait your turn to take revenge. No. Actually, more, it's endurance. Zöpa means endurance. You have the endurance. Endurance? It's more endurance. More endurance, really. Which is the ability to not to be perturbed by anything. That's really Zöpa. Not to be perturbed by anything. To have that endurance. That's Zöpa.
Stable.
Yeah, stable, and that attitude, and that really, it's really something that overcomes anger. The opposite of anger is opposite of anger. In fact, the chapter in the Buddha, one on patience is the most beautiful one. It's so beautifully kind of argued and how anger can only destroy you, and how it's beautiful, how important thing is there. And often the patience, or is Zöpa is described as the armor of a bodhisattva. When Buddha was, before his enlightenment, all the demonic forces came to attack him. He remained in the compassion, in meditation of great, the great patience of the great, armor patience, so that when all these weapons are thrown by the demonic forces as they came near him, they all transform into flower and, adoration to the part transforms. When you are actually patient. In fact, something interesting, trouble with us is that in situation of conflicts, if I give you a particular example, a practical example, in situation of conflict, when you have somebody is like, he's not happy with you, and he's really, he's angry with you, the most important thing is not to defend yourself. Just listen, be open and listen. Listen. Listen, give yourself. Then you're really a warrior. Listen, and then what happens if you really listen to person really feel satisfied. Of course, unless the person is crazy, and but a sensible person, if you really listen, then what? You come out of the situation, maintain your integrity and diffusing the situation. It's very much that patience. Never be perturbed by anything. Just be calm and cool. But also, if somebody is angry with you, especially in the West, and if you try to be just calm and cool, it makes them even more angry. So you should be more, you should be really sure that you should be a little emotional in a nice way, that you're open, you're listening, you're hearing, you understand, you sympathize, and then you listen, then you can diffuse situation. Afterwards, you can become really resolve, the conflict and become. So that's a wonderful thing about patience. And the diligence of Veya, or Tsundu in Tibetan, is to find, what is Tsundu? Tsundu is not just hard work. Hard work is not necessary. Serenity is to find joy in what is virtuous, what is positive. It's be enthusiastic about virtue, about something wholesome. Like when you practice, you should do it with enthusiasm, not just practicing, not with enthusiasm. That's why, particularly if you know the meaning of the practice and the teachings, if you do more meaning of the practice, more and more you realize, more and more you have the view, then as you become more and more, you feel more inspired, more, more inspired and more, then you inspires really kind of a special kind of diligence, which is not really hard work at all, which is joyful, which really energizes you, And then then the fifth is concentration, which is Sanskrit called dhyana, Tibetan called something, and Japanese called Zen. That is basically what is the essence of meditation, is not to be distracted through mindful awareness. Bring your mind in the state of calm abiding, of shine. And then from that clear seeing of vipassana, langtong, dawns. Overcome our ordinary mind to open the dimension of wisdom. Then finally, wisdom of prajna, or sherab, is the perfect discrimination of all phenomena and all knowable things. That is, that really come to really realize the true nature of all phenomena and all the knowable things. When Buddha attained enlightenment, he not only come to know the ultimate nature of everything, he come to know all the multiplicity of all knowledge. If Buddha was an engineer, he would be the perfect engineer, perfect doctor, perfect psychologist, and perfect in everything, because not only he is good at he realized nature mind. In fact, something extraordinary is that when you are such Dzogchen practice, there was a story of, well, better not tell, you can cut off. But the extraordinary thing about it is that when, such masters, Rinpoche, great masters, they were great scholars, but actually when you really compare to other scholars, they really, once one great scholar who was going to be a Gadin Chiba. He was amazed about Rinpoche saying, how come? I studied for many years till my hair has gone grey, but I know that you didn't really study that much. How come your understanding realization is much more than this? Then he said, Rinpoche said, for the first time I boasted a little bit. He said, he's us, Dzogchen Pass. It's quite simple. We can just remain in the cave, meditate. I mean, when you raise in the nature mind, then is the Rigpa, the nature mind, itself regions begin to, Sherab Namje, it begin to emanate. So then, not only you begin to know the ultimate nature, but the multi-spin, you got to know that even tell stories is better, and all the things you begin to know. I mean, in the case of Ngyondro Rinpoche, I remember one master called Jangchub Rinpoche. They studied together. But they studied together at the same master. But I don't know what happened to Ngyondro. Ngyondro is the name of Ngyondro Rinpoche. Suddenly just something happened to it, reached to a completely different league. That's when you opened up the dimension of, that not only you come to know the ultimate, you know all the knowledges. That's wisdom. So that complete the 6 parameters in a complete way.